They say writing is a solitary act. But what if you're not alone when the words come? Some scripts are born from talent. Others are whispered. They arrive in a frenzy, scratched onto pages during sleepless nights, dictated by dreams that won't go away, or worse, by something that doesn't want to leave. Throughout horror history, a handful of films have left behind more than just disturbed audiences. They've left trails of unease about how they were made in the first place. Writers who don't remember writing, directors who claim the film wrote itself. Stories that appear from nowhere, with no clear authorship. Some call it inspiration. Others suspect possession. This list doesn't just explore terrifying films. It digs deeper into the unnerving origin stories behind them. Tales of screenplays lost and found, of scenes crafted under trance-like states, of narratives that seem too aligned with nightmares to be mere coincidence. So if you think every horror film begins with a structured outline and a calm cup of coffee, think again. These are the ones birthed in darkness, guided by forces unnamed, and stitched together by minds not entirely their own. Let's dive into the shadows and meet the scripts that never should have been written. Fact has own. The Norliss tapes, 1973. He locked himself in a room with nothing but a typewriter and a voice recorder. 7 days later, the script was finished. And then it vanished. The Norliss tapes was meant to be just another supernatural mystery of the weak TV pilot. But behind the scenes, its creation bordered on obsession. Writer William F. Nolan, known for his precision and polish, reportedly entered a near-fugue state while writing. He later claimed the story had come to him whole, as if dictated through a fog. He didn't eat, he barely slept. He just wrote. When production requested the original draft, Nolan couldn't find it. The master document had disappeared, leaving only a slightly altered production copy and reel-to-reel audio tapes, some of which reportedly cut off mid-sentence, as if something had interrupted him. The film itself follows a skeptical journalist investigating the occult, documenting his descent through a series of taped recordings. But what plays on screen eerily reflects the real-life creation of the story. Fragmented memory, voices in the dark, and an overwhelming sense that something else is pulling the strings. There's a hollow quality to the film, as if it's aware it wasn't supposed to be made. The sound design lingers like a warning. The story, though incomplete, feels final. Too final. Some scripts are written in ink. Others burn themselves into tape. Fact hash 2. The Mephisto Waltz, 1971. The first draft arrived with no notes. No edits, just a message scrawled in red ink on the title page. It came to me in a single night. When screenwriter Ben Maddow handed in the script for The Mephisto Waltz, the studio was stunned. Not because it was perfect, it wasn't, but because it felt untouchable. Attempts to revise the text, even small changes, were met with unspoken resistance. Editors walked away with migraines. One even claimed the pages shuffled themselves when left alone. Maddow later confessed he'd written the screenplay in one sitting, unable to stop. He described the experience as being ridden by an idea that wasn't his. "I wasn't crafting a story," he said. "I was following a melody I didn't recognize." The film tells the story of a pianist whose body becomes the vessel for a dying occultist. But for some, the real possession happened off-screen before a single frame was shot. The music in the film is jarring, dissonant, almost mocking. The script mirrors this with lines that sound like they were never meant to be spoken out loud. And when Maddow was later asked if he'd ever felt the same pull again, he simply shook his head. Once was enough. Sometimes, the muse doesn't knock. It forces the door open. Fact hash 3. The Shuttered Room, 1967. No one remembers who wrote the final version. And that's exactly the problem. Officially, The Shuttered Room is based on a story by H.P. Lovecraft and August Derleth. But ask anyone from the production who turned that story into a screenplay, and the answers grow strange. Multiple writers were brought in, yet none are credited on the final cut. One claimed he wrote 40 pages before receiving a version with different scenes he didn't recognize, but written in his own voice. Legend has it that a local ghostwriter in England was hired late into the rewrite process, under strange conditions, no phone calls, no in-person meetings, and all notes to be left outside his door. When the studio tried to reach him after delivery, the address no longer existed. The film itself is an uncanny mix of styles and tones, part gothic horror, part fever dream. The narrative slips between reality and delusion with no warning, as if multiple minds shaped it in isolation, yet somehow told the same nightmare. There's a signature missing from the credits, but not from the script. Something left its mark. Sometimes, authorship is just a name, but influence, That's another matter. Fact hash 4. The Night Digger, 1971. She read the script and cried. Not from emotion, she said it felt like a mirror she never wanted to look into. Patricia Neal was still recovering from a massive stroke when she joined the Night Digger. But it wasn't just her body that felt fragile, it was her mind. She described the screenplay as violently intimate, as if someone had written directly from her subconscious. The writer, Roald Dahl Neal's own husband, crafted the film under what he later called a series of inexplicable trances. He insisted the script came to him during repeated dreams, always the same. A woman alone in a decaying house, visited nightly by something that never fully entered the light. Each morning, he'd write until the dream stopped. But here's the unsettling part. Dahl's final draft was altered. Pages appeared with handwriting neither he nor Neal recognized, and yet they kept them in. Because removing them, they said, felt wrong. The story on screen is one of disconnection, creeping dread, and emotional paralysis. But beneath that lies something worse, a sense that the characters are reacting to things the audience can't see, maybe even things the writer never meant to include. Not all horror is external. Sometimes, the scariest parts bleed through the pen. Fact hash 5. The Evil, 1978. The script was finished before anyone started writing. At least, that's how director Gus Triconis tells it. According to his interviews, The Evil began as a vague pitch, an idea about a haunted asylum, but no formal treatment existed. Then, out of nowhere, a full draft appeared in the production office. No date, no author. Just a plain manila envelope with a single sentence typed across the front. Do not alter. Naturally, they did. Every attempt to revise the screenplay was met with setbacks. Pages went missing from printing rooms. Dialogue reverted to its original form. Rewrites were accidentally overwritten, sometimes hours after being saved. One assistant claimed that the lines rewrote themselves overnight and refused to be left alone with the document again. The resulting film is low budget, yes, but there's something unshakable about its energy. The violence feels erratic, the pacing unnervingly unnatural. Scenes escalate without logic, then drop off without resolution, like a story that wanted to be told but not understood. Some call it cursed, others call it clumsy, but if you ask Triconis, he'll just say this: I don't remember directing half of it, and I've never had that happen again. Some films follow a vision. This one followed a voice. Fact cancelletto. Let's Scare Jessica to Death, 1971. The woman beneath the water had no eyes, just an open mouth and a soundless scream. That's what screenwriter Lee Kalchheim claimed he saw night after night for months. The image haunted his dreams, vivid and unchanging. Eventually, he began writing just to silence her. What emerged was Let's Scare Jessica to Death, a film that feels less written and more exhaled, soft, slow, suffocating. Kalchheim wrote in fragments. Voiceovers came first. Then disconnected scenes, mist-covered images, and whispers from people who never speak on screen. He never wrote an outline, never planned an ending. It came like mist, he said. It never asked permission. Even the production was unnerving. Actors reported strange moods on set, moments of unexplained sadness or laughter that didn't match the scene. The house used for filming was reportedly unlisted on local maps. And once filming wrapped, Kalchheim burned his notes. Some things shouldn't stay with you, he told a friend. The film isn't loud, it doesn't scream, it seeps. A story about madness and memory, and a girl who may or may not exist at all. But for the man who wrote her, she existed, every night, beneath the surface. Fact hash 7, Alucarda, 1977. Juan López Moctezuma described writing Alucarda as a fever. He didn't mean metaphorically. During the summer of 1976, Moctezuma reportedly fell ill while preparing a new project. Confined to bed and delirious with fever, he dictated pages to a friend, long rants about nuns, blood rites, and demonic rituals, all delivered in a voice that didn't sound like him. The friend thought he was joking, until the notes made sense. By the time Moctezuma recovered, the screenplay was done. He didn't remember writing it, but when he read it, he cried. The film that followed is one of the most extreme nunsploitation horrors of its era, raw, unhinged, and visually possessed. Screams echo endlessly. Eyes roll back in unison. The characters don't act so much as convulse with purpose. And at the center is Alucarda, a girl who feels less invented and more invoked. Critics dismissed it as exploitative, but others saw something more. A work too visceral, too intuitive, to have been carefully designed. Moctezuma never replicated the intensity of Alucarda again, and perhaps he never wanted to. After all, what kind of story writes itself? when the writer is unconscious. Fact hashite, next of kin 1982. It appeared on a desk that had been cleared the night before. No one claimed to have put it there. No one claimed to have written it. The original script for Next of Kin wasn't part of any known development pipeline. There were no early drafts, no paper trail, no authorship log, just a worn binder left in the production office of a small Australian studio with the title printed on the first page in faded blue ink. And at the bottom of that page, one line, handwritten, "Keep the door locked." Producers assumed it was a prank until they read it. The story follows a woman returning to her late mother's nursing home, a place haunted more by memory than ghosts. But the script read like a diary. Scenes included private details from the lead actress's life, moments she had never shared with anyone. The atmosphere was suffocatingly accurate. It felt like the walls were watching, one crew member said, even off-set. When they attempted to credit the writer, the name listed in the system didn't exist. No tax record, no passport, just a name one that's since been removed from all official materials. The film unfolds like a secret unspooling. The fear is quiet, coiled, patient. It doesn't chase, it waits. And somewhere between the lines, that message returns. Keep the door locked. Fact #9. The sender, 1982. He woke up at 3:11 a.m. every night for a month, soaked in sweat. Each time with the same phrase in his head, "He dreams you back." Thomas Baum, screenwriter of The Sender, had never kept a dream journal before, but as the visions worsened, he started writing them down, cryptic scenes of hospitals, blood, and a man who could transmit his nightmares to others. The images didn't feel random, they felt like memories. Within a few weeks, those fragments became the script. Baum later admitted he didn't fully understand what he'd written. The logic was fractured, non-linear, yet held together by a kind of subconscious dread. He described the process as taking dictation from a fear I couldn't name. The film itself drips with psychological static. Time folds in on itself. Reality buckles. The lead character's power isn't just terrifying, it's infectious, spreading from patient to doctor, from screen to audience. Even the sound design hums like it's coming from beneath the floorboards. And when asked if he'd ever experienced the dreams again, Baum gave a chilling response. "I stopped dreaming after the film wrapped. Completely. Like the dreams had been removed." What happens when your nightmares run out? Fact Hassan 0, Messiah of Evil, 1973. They called it a collaboration, but both writers insist the other finished it. Husband and wife duo Willard Hike and Gloria Katz were no strangers to screenwriting. But Messiah of Evil was different. According to both, the story began with a recurring image they saw in shared dreams, a town without mirrors. In these dreams, the people didn't blink. They just stared. When they wrote separately, their pages matched. Paragraphs lined up, dialogue overlapped. They joked about being possessed by the same ghost until the coincidences stopped being funny. During production, the cast complained about changes in the script. They hadn't rehearsed entire monologues appearing in their trailers overnight. The directors insisted they hadn't touched a word. When one actor tried to memorize the new lines, he claimed he felt physically sick. It was like the words didn't want to be remembered, he said. The finished film feels like a broadcast from another realm. Paintings that move. People who eat raw meat in supermarkets. A plot that doesn't conclude because it doesn't need to. It only needs to be heard. And when asked who truly wrote the ending, Huik and Katz answered the same thing. "I thought you did. Some stories don't need writers. They just need a vessel." Fact Hassonon, The Keep, 1983. It was supposed to be a straightforward adaptation, but nothing about The Keep stayed straight. Director Michael Mann based the film on F. Paul Wilson's novel, a supernatural thriller with clear structure and tone. But the screenplay, written by Mann himself, refused to follow any pattern. Drafts multiplied with no clear order. Scenes were rewritten, then mysteriously reverted to previous versions. And late into production, Mann told an editor, "I no longer know what version we're shooting." He later claimed the film's central image, a fortress built to contain an ancient evil, began appearing in his dreams, shifting shape each time. Some nights, it was stone. Other nights, it breathed. The cast reported confusion and unease on set. Ian McKellen described entire shooting days where no one knew which scene they were filming until the camera rolled. The final film was butchered by the studio, trimmed from over 3 hours to under 2, but what remains still hums with dread. The soundtrack pulses like a distant warning. The visuals blur the line between history and hallucination. And the story, despite its gaps, still pulls you towards something ancient, something locked away. For now, Mann never revisited the project, but when asked if he'd ever release the director's cut, He replied, "What if that was never the real version? Some films get lost in the edit. Others were never meant to be found whole." Fact Hasson 2. Deathbed. The Bed That Eats. 1977. He had the dream 3 nights in a row. The bed, the girl, the teeth. George Barry didn't set out to write a horror film. He just wanted the dream to stop. But when he finally put the images on paper, they kept expanding, pulling him deeper into a surreal story about a possessed bed that consumes the living. He finished the first draft in a single weekend, then forgot about it. For decades, that's not an exaggeration. Barry completed the film, released it in limited VHS circulation, then lost track of it entirely. For 25 years, he didn't remember making it, until one day, he discovered a forum discussing a bizarre horror film no one could trace, a film called Deathbed. When he watched it again, Barry was shaken. He didn't recall filming half the scenes. Some shots weren't in his notes, and the voiceover, narration calm, poetic, eerie, was not in his original script. Deathbed is a movie that shouldn't exist. It flows like a dream you only half remember. The logic is broken, but somehow complete. Its horror is absurd, and yet it stays with you. Barry called it a movie made by someone else, wearing my face. There are dreams you forget. Then there are dreams that remember you. Fact Hasson 3. Lamora. A Child's Tale of the Supernatural. 1973. No one can agree who wrote the final version, not even the director. Lamora is one of those rare films that feels like it drifted out of time, part Southern Gothic, part fevered fairy tale. But the screenplay's origins are as murky as the swamps that fill its frames. Director Richard Blackburn claimed to have co-written the script with Robert Fern, yet Fern denied completing it, and Blackburn later confessed that certain pages were added during filming by someone who never worked on set. There were rumors of rewrites arriving in unmarked envelopes, new scenes placed on actors' chairs overnight, dialogues that mimicked the speech patterns of dead poets. When confronted with these changes, Blackburn said only, "We kept them because they fit too well." The story follows a young girl drawn into a decaying world of vampiric figures and predatory forces cloaked in beauty. But nothing in the film feels staged. The decay is real, the silence calculated, and the fear? It's soft, slow, parasitic. For years, fans have searched for the original script. It's never been found. Some think it never existed. Others believe it still exists, just not on paper. And sometimes, the scariest stories are the ones no one remembers writing. Fact Hasson 4. The Visitor. 1979. He didn't write it. He received it. That's how Giulio Paradisi, credited director and co-writer of The Visitor, described the creation of his most infamous film. The project began as a traditional horror thriller, funded by an odd coalition of American and Italian producers. But by the time shooting began, the script had morphed into something else. Something incoherent. Something dictated. Paradisi told interviewers he would sit down to write scenes, only to find they'd already been typed. Pages appeared in hotel drawers. Dialogue was scribbled on napkins in handwriting no one recognized. One production assistant recalled Paradisi staring at a blank page for an hour, then standing up and declaring, "It's finished." The film itself is a cosmic patchwork. A little girl with telekinetic powers, a war in heaven, a bald John Huston descending stairs into oblivion. It defies logic, and yet dares you to look for one. The visuals are hypnotic. The tone is unstable. The script feels like it was translated from a language no longer spoken. Critics called it incoherent. Fans call it visionary, but Paradisi calls it a transmission. And when asked who he believed sent it, he paused. "I don't know, but I haven't written anything since." Some scripts are found in archives, others fall from above. Fact Hasson 5. Dark August, 1976. It wasn't found, it was inherited. When Martin Goldman began pre-production on Dark August, he wasn't holding a script, he was holding a journal. The leather-bound book arrived by post, unsigned, filled with story fragments, drawings, and a complete scene-by-scene breakdown of a film that didn't exist. It had no title, no author, just a symbol carved into the inside cover, a circle pierced by a crooked line. Goldman swore he'd never seen the symbol before, but weeks later, he spotted it carved into a tree near the film's shooting location. He used the journal as the basis for the script, barely changed anything. When he tried, scenes fell apart. Actors forgot lines. Film stock came back fogged, so he stopped trying. Dark August is about a man cursed after a fatal accident. But its true horror lies in how it feels. Murky, hesitant, as though the film itself is holding something back. The pacing is broken, the tension is personal, and through it all, That same symbol appears painted on doors, scratched on glass, burned into memory. After filming ended, Goldman locked the journal away. He won't say where, only that it hasn't aged. The pages are still warm. Some stories aren't written, they're passed on. Bonus pick, Paper House, 1988. Before we wrap, here's one more horror film you need to add to your list. She drew a house, then a face, then he blinked. Paper House is often remembered for its dreamlike atmosphere and heartbreaking central performance, but few know how it was written. Screenwriter Matthew Jacobs described the process as collaborating with the subconscious. He would wake up with entire scenes mapped out in his head, dialogue, blocking, even camera movement. Yet when asked to explain the emotional logic behind them, he had no answer. The story follows a sickly girl who discovers that whatever she draws becomes real in her fever dreams. What begins as a child's wish fulfillment quickly turns into something colder, deeper. The house becomes a prison, the face she drew becomes a stranger, and reality becomes the thing she's trying to escape. There's no gore here, no demons, just the quiet dread of a world that listens too closely and answers in silence. The way the film captures childhood fear is uncanny, isolated, surreal, tender and cruel in equal measure. Years later, Jacobs admitted that he often returned to those scenes in his sleep, revisiting them as if they hadn't finished with him. They feel borrowed, he said. I'm not sure from who. Not all stories demand to be told. Some wait and let you think they're yours. If you find yourself drawn to stories that were never meant to be written, consider staying with us a little longer. There are more films like these, forgotten, denied, or whispered into existence. And we're just getting started.